Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at what really makes teams autonomous and empowered.
Yeah, we've got some fascinating sources lined up.
We do. Our mission really is to dig into Steve Jobs' thinking at Apple, see how that connects to things like Agile and Scrum.
And that whole Spotify model discussion.
Right, and then look ahead. How's AI changing the game for high-performing teams? Some of this might challenge how you think about teamwork.
It's interesting how these different threads, they kind of circle back to some core ideas. For Jobs, I mean, it really began with the people.
The talent, yeah.
Exactly. He had this belief, almost a conviction, that the difference between an average person and a superstar wasn't small. He'd say like 50 or 100 to 1.
Wow.
So he felt a small team, but filled with what he called A-plus players, could just absolutely run circles around a much bigger team of B and C players.
And recruiting those A-plus players, that was his job, right? He didn't delegate that.
No, he saw it as maybe his most important job.
So this idea of just giving teams autonomy, Jobs might say, hold on, it's not automatic.
Not at all. For him, autonomy was something you earned because the team was just that good. That talent density had to be there first. A pretty radical idea for some leaders.
Definitely. And beyond just who was on the team, there was the size limit, too.
Oh yeah, the 100-person rule. For huge projects like the Mac, he kept the core team under 100 people.
Why 100?
His reason was almost personal. He said he can't remember more than 100 first names, but the effect was it forced incredible focus, ruthless prioritization.
Okay, so small elite teams. But even the best people need some direction. How did he guide them without, micromanaging?
Well, he believed A-plus players don't need to be managed in that typical way. What they did need, he said, was a common vision.
A North Star.
Exactly, like wanting to put a ding in the universe. That big vision allowed people to make their own decisions, but aligned ones. He had this 10-80-10 rule idea.
Right.
Leader intensely involved at the start, the first 10% setting that vision. Then the team owns the middle 80% the execution.
Right, they run with it.
They run with it. Then the leader jumps back in for the final 10% refinement, polishing, like getting the iPhone bezel just right.
That makes sense. So the vision empowers the 80%, but it wasn't always smooth, was it? There's that rock tumbler idea.
Yeah. He said the idea itself is just a small part. The real work is craftsmanship. The rock tumbler metaphor. It's about how ordinary rocks, kind of ugly, they tumble around.
Bump into each other.
Yeah, bump up against each other with some grit and eventually become these smooth, polished stones. It shows how he saw creative conflict, that friction between smart people, as essential for refining ideals.
Oh, okay. Talent, vision, constructive friction. How did Apple make the accountability part stick, make it operational?
They had a very simple, very powerful tool, the directly responsible individual, the DRI.
The DRI.
For any task, any agenda item, there's one name next to it, that person owns it. End of story. Asking who's the DRI on that? Just cut through any confusion.
Clears things up fast.
Yeah.
It feels like Jobs was sort of intuitively doing Agile before it was maybe fully codified.
You could definitely say he was an intuitive, agile practitioner. His approach was very personality-driven, obviously. But modern frameworks like Scrum, they provide a system to get similar results.
They formalize it.
Right. They formalize the roles, the iterative cycles, the feedback loops that support that kind of autonomy Jobs fostered.
And what about Spotify? That model gets talked about constantly.
Ah, yes, the Spotify model. Well, the thing is, even people from Spotify say it wasn't really a rigid blueprint. It was more like a snapshot of our current way of working at a specific time.
So copying it might not work.
They actually warn against cargo culting, copying the structures, the squads and tribes without the underlying culture of trust and autonomy. And Spotify itself, that model changed a lot as they grew.
So no magic bullet model. It's more about principles. Looking forward then, how does AI fit into this picture of team autonomy?
AI is potentially a huge enabler here. It's starting to automate a lot of the toil, the repetitive stuff that drains energy.
Freeing people up for more creative work.
Exactly. And think about remote Teams AI tools for meeting summaries, better asynchronous communication. It bridges gaps. But maybe the biggest thing is AI as a force multiplier.
How so?
Well, the definition of an A-plus player might shift. It might become less about just raw execution speed and more about how effectively you can direct and leverage AI tools. It could make high autonomy, high performance teams more achievable for more organizations.
So wrapping this up, what's the real takeaway for you listening? It seems the core lesson isn't about finding the perfect model to copy.
No, it really isn't. It's about those timeless principles.
Yeah, like relentlessly going after top talent, providing that crystal clear, compelling vision.
Implementing real accountability, like that DRI concept.
Actually welcoming that constructive friction, that rock tumbler effect.
And underpinning it all, you absolutely need that deep culture of trust.
Those seem to be the constants, right? The things that empower small teams and drive innovation, regardless of the era. So here's the thought to leave you with. As AI changes how work gets done, how does your definition of that A-plus player need to evolve? What does insanely great look like now?